We all live in this super seamless digital world. But what if I told you that the future of AI, and even the device you're holding right now, depends on the physical flow of ships through one tiny, narrow waterway? We're about to uncover this hidden and pretty shocking connection between a single point on a map and, well, the entire global digital economy. All right, so let's start with a single number, 20 to 25%. That's the share of the entire world's seaborne oil that has to pass through one little strip of water. That is a staggering amount, and it shines a huge spotlight on an incredible vulnerability right at the heart of the global economy. And this is that choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. It's the main artery for all the energy flowing out of the Persian Gulf. Honestly, a better way to think about it isn't just as a shipping lane, but as the world's energy aorta. And if that gets clogged, well, the whole global system starts to feel the squeeze. Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea here. Imagine that vital artery isn't just under a little pressure. It's smack in the middle of a full-blown crisis. The shockwaves from a disruption here travel much, much further and in more surprising ways than you could possibly imagine. So what's so fascinating here is how this crisis is actually playing out. It's not a complete shutdown. There's an ongoing conflict that's turned the strait into a high-risk zone. This means there's what you could call selective enforcement. Some ships are let through, others are stopped or seized, and that creates just massive uncertainty. The result is pretty predictable. Any ship that has a choice is taking the long way around Africa. I mean, that adds up to 2 weeks to a voyage and sends shipping costs through the roof by up to 50%. Okay, so we've got an energy crisis. Big deal, right? But this is where the story takes this totally unexpected turn. This isn't just about what you pay for gas. This disruption has created a direct threat to making the most advanced technology on the entire planet. See, the key to this whole thing is a place called Ras Laffan in Qatar. It's the world's #1 hub for liquefied natural gas, LNG. But, and this is the crucial part, as a byproduct of making all that gas, it also produces a massive amount of the world's helium. And with this crisis messing with its operations, that helium supply is now in serious jeopardy. Okay, this slide right here lays out just an unbelievable and honestly super fragile chain of events. It's a 4-step domino effect. First, you process natural gas into LNG. Step 2, you pull out helium as a byproduct. Then, in step 3, that helium is used to supercool all the sensitive gear in semiconductor factories. And that brings us to the final step. That cooling is what makes it possible to manufacture the world's most advanced AI chips. The logic here is, it's brutal and it's simple. No LNG means no helium, and no helium means no AI chips. And just to be crystal clear, we're not talking about the helium you put in party balloons. This is super high purity helium. And for the big chip makers like TSMC and Samsung, there's just no substitute for it. It's absolutely essential for precision cooling, for finding microscopic leaks, and for keeping the inside of a chip fab cleaner than an operating room. Without a steady flow of it, your yield, the number of good chips you get from each silicon wafer, it just plummets. So, okay, what happens when that helium supply gets squeezed? Well, chip makers have to make some really tough calls. They're forced to reallocate their limited production capacity. They start prioritizing the stuff with the highest profit margins, those super powerful AI accelerators, and the high bandwidth memory they need to run. And what gets pushed to the back of the line? The standard stuff, the DRAM and NAND memory chips that run our smartphones, our laptops, pretty much all of our consumer gadgets. But wait, the problem doesn't even stop with the chips themselves. Now we gotta zoom out and look at the massive physical buildings that all those chips actually live in. The world's data centers. So let me ask you this. We throw around terms like the cloud or AI models, but where do they actually exist? The answer? They live in these massive, sprawling, power-guzzling buildings packed to the gills with servers. And here's the thing. They were already facing a crisis of their own. Look, even before this whole mess, the data center industry was already struggling to keep up. Demand for electricity, mostly thanks to AI, is just exploding. It can take 3 to 5 years just to get a new data center hooked up to the power grid. And on top of that, you've got these critical shortages of basic stuff like electrical transformers and even copper wiring. And then on top of that already stressed out system, bam, you drop a global energy shock right in the middle of it. A spike in natural gas prices makes backup power way more expensive. It injects volatility into every single part of building and running these things. The energy crisis basically acts as this huge multiplier, making every single one of those problems we just talked about even worse. So this number you're seeing,
That's what we're spending globally every single year to build new data centers, almost $1/3 trillion. And all of that investment is now facing this profound uncertainty, because at the end of the day, you can't build the future of AI if you can't guarantee you'll have the power to turn it on.
Okay, so we've just walked through this whole domino effect of problems, from a single strait all the way to the entire digital economy. But this kind of chaos is also forcing a whole new way of thinking. So let's look at how global businesses are adapting. And this right here, this is the fundamental shift in thinking. For decades, the name of the game was just in time. Keep inventories as lean as possible, make supply chains hyper efficient. The new model, which is really born out of necessity, is just in case. The focus isn't just on efficiency anymore, it's on resilience, on having buffers for when things inevitably go sideways. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. It's driving real action right now. Companies are scrambling to lock in long-term energy contracts with stable places like the US and Australia. They are obsessively mapping their supply chains, trying to find every single energy-linked weak spot, like helium. They're building up their inventories. And maybe most importantly, they're deciding where to build their next data centers based on one main factor: getting access to a stable, reliable power grid. So let's pull back. What is the big picture here? All of these little adjustments are pointing to a brand new strategic reality for how the world is going to work. When a crisis like this hits, the response is pretty much global and immediate. The US tries to walk this fine line between military strikes and calming things down. Major importers in Asia, like Japan, South Korea, and China, all tap into their emergency reserves. People start looking around for new energy sources. But here's the real long-term takeaway, that last point. Governments are hitting the accelerator on a trend that was already happening, breaking up global supply chains into more regional, fragmented networks, all in the hope of protecting themselves from the next global shock. And this, right here, is really the core idea of this whole explainer. For years, we thought innovation meant a faster computer chip or a smarter algorithm. But in the world we live in today, the ability to build a resilient system, one that can actually handle shocks, from energy choke points to helium shortages to power grid failures, that ability is now just as valuable, just as strategic as the innovation itself. So, I'm going to leave you with this question. We've just traced a single line from a narrow, little bit of water all the way to the future of artificial intelligence. It really makes you stop and ask yourself, what are the hidden dependencies, the unseen single points of failure, in our own industries, in our companies, or even just in our own lives? Figuring that out is the first step to building a much more resilient future.